Okay, what happened?
Um,
Mooching.
they fell down the hole, and then it was just Shillian and Mooching. While Chung is nowhere to be found, and then Mooching's limbs are all fucked up
Yeah, he's
from the
burnt.
suffering. Um, so Shillian is carrying him and trying to get through the crevasse.
They're on the Heaven Crossing bridge that Jinwoo made all those years ago, and there's like a bunch of lava below them, and these evil spirits in the lava that are trying to like kill them. And then Mooching tries to sacrifice himself to like get them off of his tail, but then Shillian's like, "You're finally making sense. I can't leave you behind." And then
Yeah.
Mooching's like about to fucking commit suicide, so that Shillian
Right.
keeps going, and then Function saves him, and then Mooching is like, "Oh, you saved me!" like in his brain, and he's like short circuiting, and then Function's like using his mouth and like sticks to fire his fucking weapon because he doesn't have
Yeah.
shit. And then they get up and they're safe again, and then they're just bantering like the old days and bringing up each other's shit. And then Shillian's like, "Don't bring up my shit too in your fucking argument. Help me find my husband." And that's where we are. And Mooching is on Function's back. Alright, chapter 128. Bloody Rain Sought Flower, Vicious Battle Against White No Face. At that moment, all three felt a wave of heat surge from below. They all cried, "Watch out!" And their feet moved faster as 7 or 8 pillars of fire shot to the skies. Even more of the molten, vengeful spirits had gathered below. "Function, give Mooching to me," Shillian called out. Without another word, Function peeled Mooching off his back and tossed him to Shillian. Once on Shillian's back, Mooching exclaimed, "Finish them off quickly! What a nuisance!" "I don't need you to tell me that," Function replied as he pulled his bowstring to ready multiple arrows at once. His bow attacks could hit a much wider area than the spiritual blasts that he and Shillian had been firing off wildly. The arrows made explosive impact with the lava, sending waves surging high into the air and eliciting screams from all around. "Nice work," Shillian complimented. "It's all right, I guess," Mooching commented from his back. The vengeful spirits were full of rancor, and after another huddle, they swam further ahead and worked together to blow flames at them. After a series of rumbles, Shillian said, "They've burnt through a stretch of the bridge ahead. They want to cut off our path." "Fucking hell," Function cursed. "You're all teaming up, working so hard. Why do you have to hurt people? The way I see it, none of you are ever leaving that lava, not for another 8,000 years." The moment he raised his bow, the bolt and vengeful spirits scattered again. "All right, stop yelling and get ready," Shillian said. "We're gonna jump. 1, 2, 3. On 1, they began to speed up. On 2, they calculated the number of steps remaining. On 3, their feet pushed off and they jumped. 3 figures leapt into the air, passed over the gap in the broken bridge, and then landed on the other side before continuing their mad dash. The bridge had been created as a path to the heavens, so naturally it sloped gradually upwards. However, the more they ran, the lighter Shillian felt, light as a swallow. "It's been a long time since the 3 of us did something like this, huh?" "Do you mean fighting side by side or running for our lives?" Mushin questioned. "Both," Shillian said. "We do this all the time," Function exclaimed. "Really?" Shillian wondered. Well, one's state of mind obviously changed completely once they cleared the air. Shillian let out a laugh, but his careful eyes never stopped scanning below them. There was still no sight of a red silhouette, so he couldn't help but be a little on edge. "Sunlong!" His call echoed in the expansive, empty underground cave, but no one answered. Shillian licked his dry lips. He scanned the room, eyes darting this way and that, and Mooching was silent for a moment as he watched from his perch on Shillian's back. "Your Highness, you really like him, huh?" Shilian hadn't expected him to ask that out of nowhere. Ah, 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 ah. Although his expression was completely blank, the tips of his ears were gradually turning red. Seeing him like this, Mooching couldn't think of what to say, so after a moment of hesitation, he plowed ahead. I'm not trying to scare you on purpose or anything, but I have to remind you, have you considered... Maybe we were the only two sent to the bridge, and Crimson Rain-Sought Flower wasn't. Duh, of course he was sent elsewhere, since there's only the two of you here, Function responded, but he trailed off once he realized what Mooching was trying to say. Rather than saying Hua Cheng had been sent elsewhere, he was saying that Hua Cheng might have fallen into the lava. Shilian licked his lips again. How could that be? Don't say it's impossible, Mooching said. Crimson Rain-Sought Flower is a supreme ghost king, no doubt about that, but White No-Face is too. He's from the first generation of supreme ghost kings, and he's the master of Mount Tonglu. This place is his territory, the domain where his spiritual powers are strongest. Function glared furiously at Mooching. Shut your mouth! What's wrong with you? Can't you say something positive at a time like this? He scolded. He's the Crimson Rain-Sought Flower, I'm telling you! Mooching stopped, but he couldn't resist countering Function's statement. I just think we have to consider what to do in the worst-case scenario. That offending roll of a 1, the single dot so unusually vividly red and stark against Hua Cheng's pale palm, surfaced in Shilian's mind. He didn't know how to respond, but just as he was going to try, he came to an abrupt stop. Function was following right behind and almost collided with him. What is it? As soon as he asked, he realized there was no need. Ahead of them, millions of shimmering silver sparkles clouded the air, twinkling like stars. It was as if someone had toppled a jewelry box full of silver powder. Shilian put Mooching down and walked forward. Reaching out a hand, he gently touched a gleaming piece of silver that was slightly larger than the rest. Upon making contact, he closed his palm and slowly brought it before his eyes. The other two approached to inspect it as well, and Function muttered, This is... It's a fragment of a wraith butterfly? Mooching said simply. The overly blunt observation earned him another scornful glare from Function. Shilian's hand trembled a little. He let out a long breath as he clutched the silver wing fragment still glowing faintly. Function scratched his head. Look on the bright side. At least he didn't actually fall into the lava. He must have been here, right? And fought with someone, Mooching said, pointing to one side. A serious fight. Shilian's eyes followed his gesture, then went wide. All the rocks around them were covered with countless terrifying gashes made by a sharp blade, the distinctive blade marks of Ming. Each strike from that scimitar sliced straight to the bone. It wasn't as though Shilian had never seen Hua Cheng use his blade before, but his style had always been relaxed and easy, nonchalant and casual, less handling a weapon than toying with a pocket knife. But these blade marks were from the strikes fueled by killing intent. It was easy to imagine the enormous skill level of his opponent and how perilous their battle had been. Without another word, Shilian fell to the ground to check. There was no trace that anyone had fallen from the bridge, nor were there any vengeful spirits gathered below it in celebration. Shilian finally relaxed a little and got to his feet, then quietly sprinted forward resolutely on his own. Behind him, Function hoisted Mooching onto his back and went after him. Your Highness! Shilian didn't want to hear his own harsh, anxious breathing, so he held his breath. Disrupting one's airflow was a great taboo for a martial artist. Not only did it add an unnecessary burden to the body, it also disrupted the rhythm of the heart. But even holding his breath was useless. His hands, arms, and legs were shaking. As he ran and ran, he tripped, fell and tumbled, rolled a dozen times, even nearly careened off the bridge. Function and Mooching both yelled at him to be careful. Suddenly, Shilian came to a halt and looked back. What's that sound? Do you guys hear it? Is that the sound of battle? Function and Mooching both cried, Yes! And yes! They could hear the cracking and rumbling of weapons clashing and spiritual powers colliding. Even the Heaven Crossing Bridge shook faintly. Lights flashed from within the darkness of the path ahead. Someone was fighting up there. Shilian rushed forward, half crawling and half stumbling. Behind him, Function muttered, Fucking hell. May all the gods and Buddhas grant their blessings. That had better be Crimson Rain's hot flower, otherwise he's gonna lose it. Stop with that rubbish, Mooching berated. We're the gods and Buddhas, and we can't grant shit. Just keep up with him. Look at how he's stumbling. He's gonna trip and fall flat on his damned face before he even sees the man. Shilian had completely forgotten about holding his breath, and his own disorderly panting echoed in his ears as he ran on and on. After many twists and turns, he at last rounded the final corner, and bright white light filled his vision. At the end of the suspended, heaven-crossing bridge, a man in red and a man in white were engaged in a vicious battle. The red-clad man wielded a long, slender silver scimitar, and his form was spectral as he flashed in and away like lightning. It was Hua Cheng, and he wasn't smiling anymore. He was completely focused, his expression sharp. There was a smear of blood on his pale, handsome cheek, adding a splash of vivid color to his biting frost. The white-clad man was, of course, White No-Face. He was wielding a sword that he had collected from somewhere, and his face was still hidden behind a half-smiling, half-crying mask. However, that mask was a little bit different from the one Shilian had seen before. It was cracked in the middle. The crack was significant, impossible to ignore. It went from the center of the forehead all the way down to the cheek just below the eye. The mask looked like it could shatter at any moment. The aura of evil seethed all around. Both combatants were astoundingly light on their feet, deftly bounding off and leaping forward in an instant. And yet each strike still carried 1,000 tons of weight, the force of their blows blasting to the skies above. The chi of the sword flew wildly. The gale of the scimitar danced maniacally. Wraith butterflies faced off against the molten, vengeful spirits below, both sides shrieking at one another with enough force to collapse mountains and overturn seas. Each time they clashed, molten lava and blazing fire exploded within the pool, sending terrifying waves surging meters high. No one else could get close. Function and Mooching finally arrived, but both were immediately nailed to the ground by shock at the scene before them, unable to move a single step more. No martial god could watch a battle such as this and not be seized with excitement. Seeing that Hua Cheng was perfectly fine, Shilian's restless heart was finally at ease. He wanted to collapse to the ground immediately, to scream and yell, but he forced himself to hold it in. When skilled fighters clash, any sudden disturbance could decide victory or defeat, and this was a battle between two supreme ghost kings. On White No-Face's side, there was another figure standing in the far distance, the State Preceptor. Naturally, he had been brought there by White No-Face. The man breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing that Shilian and company had come, but he didn't dare to recklessly make noise either. However, Hua Cheng had already noticed the newcomers. His icy focus melted slightly, and a grin finally spread across his face. It seems you've failed again. His Highness has arrived, and there is not a single person missing from his group. Shilian couldn't hold back any longer and shouted, "Sanlong!" Hua Cheng inclined his head as he answered, "Gaga." His tone then turned to one of warning. "Gaga, I'm going to get mad the next time you make yourself fall like that." Shilian gave him a warning too. "I'll get even madder the next time you jump down with me." Hua Cheng's face stiffened for a second, as if Shilian's words really did cause him momentary dread. Even facing off against White No-Face, he'd never shown such an expression before. White No-Face crushed in close. The one he struck at was Hua Cheng, but the one he spoke to was Shilian. "Shen-Le, you two are far too delighted with each other right now. Shouldn't you be taking me a bit more seriously?" The eyeball on Ming's hilt caught sight of Shilian and started spinning wildly. Hua Cheng flipped his hand and thrust, and Shilian heard a crack. His heart lurched. That was the sound of a weapon breaking. All those present hastily looked to see where the sound had come from. The scimitar in Hua Cheng's hand was fine, but the long sword wielded by White No-Face had been snapped in half by his strike. Let me drink. Ming's eyeball spun wildly once more, as if showing off in front of Shilian, and made it so happy it was in heaven. As if showing off in front of Shilian had made it so happy it was in heaven. Hua Cheng laughed heartily. It's fine. There's no reason for Gugga to worry, he said easily, then addressed White No-Face. And why should I care for the likes of you? White No-Face humphed. Afraid that Hua Cheng would enrage his opponent, the state preceptor couldn't hold back anymore and shouted to him, Young man, don't be so cocky! However, what Hua Cheng said next was even more audacious and brazen. He smiled as he pointed the sparkling, sharp scimitar at White No-Face with one hand. After all, at the end of the day, you're just a jealous old geezer. The state preceptor couldn't even bother to berate his fake smile at this point. Even Function and Mu Ching were stunned. The guts of this man. Who would dare to say such a thing directly to Zhenwu or White No-Face? They all had to admit that only Hua Cheng would dare, for he was probably the only one against whom neither Zhenwu nor White No-Face could retaliate. Mu Ching got off Function's back on his own and walked a few steps, mumbling to himself. No wonder. In the past, Zhenwu always told us to avoid Crimson Rain-Sought Flower, if we could, and to never face him head-on. A ball of white shadow flashed in front of the point of Ming's blade, blocking it. Shilian's sharp eyes identified the creature, and he shouted, Sanlong, don't cut that thing! It was the fetus spirit. Shilian saw it, so naturally Hua Cheng did as well. He easily slowed the blade's momentum, and with the slant of its tip, the slashing momentum became a flick that flung away the white ball. Once Function saw that the fetus spirit hadn't been chopped in half, his shrunken pupils returned to normal. Shaking off his shock, he yelled, Come here! Hua Cheng had flung the fetus spirit precisely in his direction, and Function rushed forward to catch it. However, the sparse hair on the fetus spirit's head bristled as soon as it saw Function's shouted order, as soon as it heard Function's shouted order, and angry snarls gurgled from its throat. The moment Function approached, it chomped at him like mad and refused to let him pick it up. Function couldn't help but be outraged. Fucking hell! It sticks to him the moment it sees him, but when it sees me, it bites. Just who's your dad here? Have you ever thought of it as your son? Mu Ching cut in. Have you ever even called it by its proper name? This comment left Function stumped. Meanwhile, Shilian couldn't sit still and watch the battle anymore. The two of you be careful, he hastily instructed. I'm going up for a closer look. You be careful yourself, Mu Ching said quietly. Don't forget, you still have 2 shackles. Shilian was slightly taken aback. Unthinkingly, he touched his neck to feel the cursed shackle there. For some reason, he didn't think White No-Face would use the shackle against him. There was no more time for words. He rushed forward. A flash of red and a flash of white whirled in vicious battle. After observing for a moment, Shilian determined it would be difficult to plunge into the chaotic fight. For now, he whipped out Royer to wrap around the state preceptor and pull him over. Master, are you all right? The state preceptor wiped the cold sweat from his face. Fine. If you're fine, then why are you sweating so heavily? Shilian asked. That's all thanks to Crimson Rain-Sought Flower, the little bastard with no filter on his mouth. What a fright, the state preceptor cried. Just then Function let out a surprised shout. Shilian raised his head and saw that White No-Face was slowly lowering his hand. He was injured. He opened his palm and glanced down at his blood-drenched hand, let out a sigh, and then chuckled. It's been many years since anyone has managed to hurt me like this. Shilian felt a sense of foreboding. Master, is he angry? Right now, the state preceptor was the one who best understood White No-Face, perhaps the only one in the world who did. No, he's worse than angry. He's happy. After a pause, White No-Face turned to Hua Cheng. He sounded quite interested as he asked, Your scimitar, did you forge it using your missing eye? It was obvious Hua Cheng had no interest in responding, but Shilian's heart jolted violently. From the first time he saw Ming, he knew that the scimitar was unusual. He had half guessed that it might have been forged from the eye Hua Cheng had lost. But White No-Face sounded so certain. Could it really be true? The state preceptor's brow wrinkled, and after a moment he said, "Oh, I remember now." "What do you remember?" Shilian asked. "I once heard my friend speak of an incident," the state preceptor said. "Many centuries ago, a wrath ghost came to Mount Tonglu." "I'm sure at least 1,000,000 wrath ghosts have paid a visit to Mount Tonglu," Muqing said. "Don't interrupt!" the state preceptor exclaimed. "That wrath ghost. He was newly formed, very young. He was already on the brink of dissipating completely when he arrived, yet for some reason he held on and drifted here." Although he didn't know why, Shilian's heart started racing. Almost dissipated? Why? "He had suffered grievous injuries," the state preceptor replied. "His soul was almost completely dispersed, and hardly any conscious mind remained to him. But still he floated along, repeating again and again that he wouldn't leave, he wouldn't leave. Probably because his wish hadn't been fulfilled. Anyway, an incident happened when Mount Tonglu opened that year. When Shilian heard he wouldn't leave, for some reason he felt almost happy, even as his heart squeezed for the little ghost." "What kind of accident?" he asked quickly. "Not only had millions of ghosts converged on Mount Tonglu, but a group of living humans had accidentally wandered into this forbidden land and were locked inside." "What?" "The only things that lived inside Mount Tonglu's domain are nefarious creatures. Ordinary people have no way to break out of the domain. Their certain fate is to become nourishment for the rest. But the Wrath Ghost, in his confused state, took the large group of living humans under his wing and fled for many days. For what reason I can't say. They were eventually cornered and surrounded by nefarious creatures, and the Wrath Ghost was about to be beaten along with the humans." Shilian knew that the solitary wandering ghost must have been Hua Cheng. "And then?" he pushed. "Was there a way to flee to safety?" "Yes," the state preceptor replied. "He could escape by forging a blood weapon and killing his way out." Muqing couldn't help but chip in. "Then wouldn't the easiest sacrifice be—" "It would be the group of humans that had fallen into such a hopeless position." Function and Muqing stared at Hua Cheng, who was wholly absorbed in the vicious fight against White No-Face. Did he... Shilian held his breath. "Yes," the state preceptor said. "He made a move." Function and Muqing's expressions were unreadable. Shilian, however, didn't move a muscle, and only waited for the state preceptor to continue. Let me drink. Sure enough, the state preceptor's story progressed as he had anticipated. He made a move. In a fit of madness, he dug out one of his own eyes. The Wrath Ghost almost made a move against the humans as well, but for some reason he didn't go through with it, the state preceptor continued. He instead used one of his own eyes as the price to forge a blood weapon. The Wrath Ghost was already clinging to existence with his last breath. After digging out his eye, he should have broken apart completely. But something had shocked him to action, and he instead fully regained his senses. I don't know what kind of wicked weapon he forged, but it somehow carried him through that battle. And there was another curious incident after that. Shilian forced himself to calm down. "What incident?" "After that battle, the heavens sent forth a heavenly tribulation, and lightning struck straight into Mount Tonglu," the state preceptor said. "Do you understand what that means?" Was there any need to explain? If a heavenly tribulation had been sent forth, it meant the heavens believed there was someone worthy of ascension within Mount Tonglu. Shilian grabbed the state preceptor. "Who was it? Who ascended?" "This is all hearsay," the state preceptor said. "But there has never been a heavenly official in the upper court who hailed from Mount Tonglu. Either what I heard was purely fabricated, or... the person who ascended rejected the heavenly realm and jumped right back down." Muqing couldn't accept it. "Ascending as a ghost?" he cried in shock. "Is that even possible? And he refused, and jumped back down? It couldn't have been him, could it? He had only just entered Mount Tonglu. He hadn't even reached the rank of Supreme. Jumping all the way down like that. He couldn't have even been sure he'd survive. Why did he do it? Why had he gone to such extremes? Just then, Shilian heard White No-Face sigh. Shenle, you have a very faithful believer. As soon as he spoke, the cracked, crying, smiling mask loomed before Shilian's face. The sight of it reflected clearly in his eyes. He was mere inches away. Shilian hadn't expected White No-Face to draw so close in no more than an instant. Roye shot up like it was bristling and ready to strike, but in the end it shrank back. It wasn't its fault, for it had always been intelligent. It would give up voluntarily if it knew that its attacks wouldn't work. White No-Face seemed to flash a smile, for the crying, smiling mask's crack grew deeper. The point of Ming's blade grazed White No-Face's neck mere seconds later, but it was late by a step. White No-Face had already dodged away in a flash. He reappeared on the highest point of the Heaven Crossing Bridge, the point where it abruptly ended, and lifted his hand slightly. No need to be nervous. I was only taking back what's mine. In his hand he held a long sword. It was entirely pitch black and as frigid as cold jade, with a silver streak down the blade's central ridge, as if its heart had been split in half. Shilian reflexively twisted his hand to feel his back. Sure enough, the blade Fangshin that he had carried on his back was gone. Fangshin was originally the crown prince of Wuyong's sword. White No-Face had retrieved what had belonged to him. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. The ghastly pale mask flaked off bit by bit until finally it fell completely and revealed the face behind. Within the raging flames, the white robe transformed into white armor. At last, White No-Face had taken off his mask and transformed into Junwu. Everyone held their breath, high on guard. There was no need to guess. He had to be even stronger in this form. "Young man, don't underestimate your opponent," the state preceptor shouted at Hua Cheng. "He's even more difficult to deal with now than he was as White No-Face. You had the advantage of a better weapon earlier, but not anymore." Sure enough, all of the wounds on Junwu's body vanished in one sweep. He was restored from head to toe. He glanced at the state preceptor and smiled. "Giving others advice on how to fight me while I'm right here. I won't kill you, but you're certainly becoming bolder." That smile was laced with warning. Although the state preceptor stopped speaking, he still returned Junwu's gaze measure for measure. "Don't worry. Sanlong has never underestimated his opponents," Shilian assured him. He was more than sure of this. No matter how brazenly fearless Hua Cheng's smile seemed, his hands would never relax. Gazing at the sword, Junwu gently whispered, "Zhushin, long time no see." Fangshin, or Zhushin, as it should now be called, gave a deep, quiet moan in his hand. Shilian had always thought that Fangshin was difficult to use because it was old. He even worried it might snap in half one day. He never expected its aura and power to be so different in the hands of its past master compared to his own. Each time Zhushin and Ming clashed, the entire Heaven Crossing Bridge shook as if it might collapse and plummet into the lava. Junwu's power and speed had clearly increased by a huge margin. While Hua Cheng was able to match his pace, he still frowned and his jaw clenched harder. Those watching the fight from afar were in a constant state of tension, for every one of Junwu's forceful strikes were aimed straight at Hua Cheng's right eye. Hua Cheng blocked twice, but both attacks were alarmingly close to hitting. He quickly realized Junwu was using the same attack each time, as if he had determined Hua Cheng's weakness was his right eye, and wanted to gouge it out a second time. Naturally, every time he lunged, Hua Cheng defended with all he had and blocked again and again. But with this strategy, wouldn't they soon find themselves at an impasse and accomplish nothing? As though it sensed danger, Ming's eye raged with unbridled fury. The black jade blade struck again, and there was a crisp sound of impact. Clink! Hua Cheng hadn't raised his scimitar to parry, but Junwu withdrew his sword. Shilian, a second streak of white, had rushed in to protect Hua Cheng. With a single swift, forceful flick, Zhu Xin's chilling blade rebounded. Shilian finally couldn't sit back and watch any longer, and had joined the fight. He was skilled in the art of catching blades with his bare hands, but this was the first time he had ever encountered such a sinister sword. A simple light flick had left half of his arm numb, especially the palm. The feeling only returned after he backed away a few steps and shook it off. "Gaga," called Hua Cheng from behind him. "Come on, let's do this together," Shilian said. Standing back to back, they focused their battle resolve against their enemy. Jinwu's smile only deepened at their display. "Oh?" "You take the top, and I'll take the bottom," Shilian said quietly. We drink.
Right, of course.
Of course.
Of course it is.
As soon as he spoke, the two split off and flew towards Jinwu, one going up and one going down. Shilian had a good grasp of Jinwu's style and could guess his next move. "Hook!" he blurted. Hua Cheng did as directed and unleashed his scimitar once more. Sure enough, Jinwu almost fell for the trick, and Shilian then instructed, "Blast!" Hua Cheng again did as he was ordered. This time, he didn't use his scimitar. Instead, he churned his spiritual powers and blasted with his bare hand. Sure enough, Jinwu was hit in the shoulder and sent reeling for a moment. If not for his wicked speed, those two moves would have probably been fatal hits. As they battled, Shilian swiftly came to his senses. Hua Cheng was the supreme of their time. With his level of skill, why would he need Shilian's directions? What a terrible affront! His old habits had come out. He was quick to apologize. I'm sorry, you don't have to listen to me." Hua Cheng, however, only smiled happily in response. "Every piece of advice Gaga gives me is the best course of action. Why wouldn't I listen?" Suddenly, the bridge below Hua Cheng caved and he lost his footing. He was about to fall. Shilian leapt onto the bridge poles and cast Royer out to wrap up Hua Cheng and reel him back. But a moment later, he felt a sudden chill on his neck. Jinwu had darted behind him and rested a hand on his shoulder. "Excellent form, Zhenle." He was too close. Shilian could feel his hair stand on end. "Gaga!" Hua Cheng exclaimed. He flung out his left hand and Ming shot through the air. Shilian reacted incredibly quickly and ducked just in time for Ming to hurtle past, brushing the top of his head as it slashed at Jinwu behind him. Only then did Jinwu release Shilian's shoulder, and Shilian used the chance to leap back to Hua Cheng's side just as Ming whirled back to his hand. The pair worked together seamlessly, and those on the side only saw three unimaginably fast figures flashing here and there like lightning, so fast they found it hard to breathe. Meanwhile, Jinwu's laughter resonated across the domed ceiling above, like he was encouraging them. "Good! Very good! Continue!" Mu Qing dodged away from a piece of the bridge caving in and asked in horror, "Master! Is he insane? He's laughing!" "I already told you," the state preceptor said. "The only thing worse than him being angry is him being happy. This is only the beginning." Now that he was wielding Zhu Xin, Jinwu was like a tiger with wings. He launched vicious attacks non-stop, all of them aimed directly at Hua Cheng's right eye. Shilian was stricken with panic at the sight. Whipping out Royer, he tangled Zhu Xin's hilt. However, Jinwu suddenly reversed his grip on the sword and yanked, bringing Shilian flying towards him. Shilian was startled at first, but he soon regained his calm. He'd originally intended to snatch the sword away, so there was nothing to be scared of. As he hurtled straight for the blade, his mind instantly played out all the hundreds of possible moves that they might exchange. Yet unexpectedly, halfway through the air, another hand caught him and pulled him back. Shilian dropped and landed. When he turned to look, Hua Cheng was there, shielding him. A black jade sword pierced his chest through. Shilian almost couldn't breathe at the sight. "Sanlang!" Hua Cheng's expression was grim. Junwu had been waiting for Shilian to be impaled on Zhu Xin's blade, and was rather disappointed to see that it had been blocked. He withdrew the sword from Hua Cheng's chest and backed away. Shilian had completely forgotten that Hua Cheng was a ghost. He could still be up and about, even if a giant hole was punched through his chest. Worried even so, he covered the unbleeding wound on Hua Cheng's chest with both hands. Sanleng, what are you doing so rashly? As if I'd let it stab you again in front of me, Hua Cheng responded. For some reason, his tone was a little too extreme. Shilian was slightly taken aback. Why do you ache so, Shenle? Jinwu's gentle voice drifted in the air. It is not as if he feels the pain. He is nothing more than a dead man. And he dared to remind Shilian of that. Consumed with fury, Shilian whipped his head around and glared. Isn't this all your fault? Jinwu only sneered in response. Is it all my fault? His question stumped Shilian, and Jinwu changed the subject. Perhaps, but Shenle, have you tarried in the mortal realm for so long that you've forgotten what you've done? Do you still remember what you did after Shenle fell? A deep, meaningful smile appeared on Jinwu's face as he leisurely asked, Do you still remember a ghost named Wu Ming? In an instant, Shilian's face lost all color. Don't! He blurted. The state preceptor sensed that things were going wrong. Your Highness, what's he saying? What did you do after Shenle fell? Shilian felt an odd sense of panic, and he glanced at Hua Cheng, then at Jinwu. His fury had been transformed to uncertainty. Hua Cheng immediately grabbed hold of him and soothed in a low voice. It's fine, Your Highness. Don't be afraid. Yeah, keep it together! Feng Xin also called out. Mu Qing, on the other hand, was sharper. What did he mean? A ghost? What ghost? But how could Shilian keep it together? Those were the most unkempt days of his life, days during which he committed the deed he most regretted. He'd never even dared to think of that period much. Whenever that pale, crescent-eyed, smiling mask surfaced in his mind, his suffering rendered him sleepless and desperate to curl into a ball, never to unfurl and face another person again. Hua Cheng had seen a Shilian who basked in glory, had seen a Shilian who had been defeated by a lost war. He'd seen a clumsy and foolish Shilian, an impoverished and beggared Shilian. All of that was nothing. But he had never seen a Shilian who rolled in filthy mud, a Shilian who yelled and swore, a Shilian full of resentment and hate. He'd never seen a Shilian who was dead set on annihilating the kingdom of Yong'an for revenge, or a Shilian who would go so far as to create human face disease for the second time. That period was too horrible to recall. In the past, he wouldn't have cared one bit if White No-Face decided to rat him out, but now he couldn't bear to find out what expression would cross Hua Cheng's face when he learned of that time in Shilian's life. He wasn't as good as Hua Cheng thought he was. He wasn't untainted by filth, saintly and pure. If Hua Cheng showed even a sliver of doubt after learning the truth, Shilian would probably never be able to live with himself, and would never have the face to see him again. As he considered all this, Shilian's expression turned fiercely grim. Cold sweat rolled from his forehead and his hands trembled. His reaction made Hua Cheng grip his hand harder. Your Highness, don't be afraid, he said with grave reassurance. Remember, the one basking in infinite glory is you. The one fallen from grace is also you. What matters is you, not the state of you. No matter what happened in the past, I will never leave you. You can tell me anything. To conclude, he added gently, You told me this yourself. Shilian started to pull himself together, but Jinwu puffed a laugh. No matter what happens, I will never leave you, he said, the words unhurried. My most faithful believers... Oh, is this Jinwu? Is this fucking... Hua Cheng, who is this? No matter what happens, I will never leave you, he said, the words unhurried. My most faithful believers, as well as my dearest friends, they all told me that once. The state preceptor's face changed, and Jinwu shot a glance at him. But in the end, no one was able to truly do as they promised, as you can see. The state preceptor, unable to bear looking at him anymore, turned his head away. Believe me, Your Highness, won't you? Hua Cheng pleaded. It wasn't that Shilian didn't believe him. It was that he didn't dare to try. In the end, Shilian swallowed hard and forced himself to chuckle, but then he felt he shouldn't be laughing and hung his head. His voice trembled as he said, Sanlang, why don't you... I'm sorry, I might... Hua Cheng stared at him for a moment, then began to speak. I actually... Before he could finish, a wave of intense killing intent lunged at them, and the two leapt apart. Some sense returned to Shilian, and the color returned to his ghastly pale face. What's with him? Why is he even... faster? Stronger? Junwu's speed and power had doubled, and were still growing, far greater than they'd been as White No-Face. They could sense the horrifying surge with every attack. Mooching noticed something else, and he shouted, Your Highness! Be careful, he's changing tactics. He's not attacking Crimson Rainsought Flower anymore. He's just going after you now. Naturally, Shilian had also realized. Roye was the only weapon he had on hand, and it couldn't attack Feng Xin head-on. It shrank back at the very sight of it. Fortunately, Ming had flawlessly blocked every strike Junwu aimed at him. That's the end of that chapter. My boys. Do you want to do one more so we can finish next time we read?
How does this one end? Like, is it a good...
It's a cliffhanger. Yes or no, bro?
No.
No, you want to drag it out for as long as fucking possible? Alright.
I need to.
Bro, they're so special to me.
Clenched.
They're so special to me.
I know.
He stabbed him. He stabbed his boyfriend.
Stabbed him, bro.
Hua Cheng ascended to heaven. And that's why he's
that's
able...
fucking...
That's why, remember when... That's why he's able to, like, enter the heaven spiritual communication array, the general one. Remember in season 2, he...
Yeah.
Shilian's, like, on call with everybody, and then Hua Cheng just, like, butts in, and, like...
Yeah.
Is like, I don't know if you guys missed me, but I haven't missed any of you. It's because he was up there for a minute. And then he left.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
He sacrificed his eye to save people because that's what Shilian would have wanted.
Yeah.
This is right after Wu Ming got dispersed. So this was Wu Ming, like, going to Mount Tonglu to try and hang on to life. And then he has to save all these people. So he rips out his own eye because he knows that's what Shilian would want. And... then because he did that and he was such a good boy, he went to heaven.
It's like,
and
Function
and Mooching hearing that, oh my god, it's so funny. They're like, what the fuck? He's not the devil.
He's not the